have been working with Salt Lake County for ever since separation. So this provides the fleet services for fuel maintenance, buying parts through Salt Lake County Fleet as well. And then this is using the Salt Lake County IT services. We are here housed in their building, and they have 2 vans that run in here. When we first left Salt Lake County, we did an analysis on cybersecurity, IT security. The firm that we actually worked with said that Salt Lake County has one of the most robust and safest systems that there is. So we've stayed with Salt Lake County for that. So we do use the IT services through that. And then the surveyor's office is one that flies under the radar, but that's for our GIS system. Andre Turok would work very closely with them, and I believe that's about it.
All right. Do we have any comments, questions, or discussion about this item, board members?
Well, this was a renewal for 3 years, basically the same terms.
Correct.
I assume that the actual dollar amount changes year over year.
Yes, that is correct. Fleet is the largest portion of those dollars, of course.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. I'll entertain a motion then to approve.
Move that we approve the resolution.
We have a motion from board member Bracken. Do we have a second? Board member
I have
Sheldon.
a question, actually.
Oh, yes.
I'm actually representing both sides of this. Do I need to declare a conflict?
I don't, I think we do agreements all the time.
I know we do, but I had to think for a second and okay. All right. Well, just know that I am representing both sides on this.
We know, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good to disclose it.
Yeah.
Good. All right, anything else? We have a motion. I believe we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that is approved. The amendment is approved. Let's move on to item 3.2, third quarter financial report. We'll kick it over to Pam and to Paul Porter, our finance director.
Paul, I just want to give a shout out to Paul for putting this information together, and the transparency with everything that we're spending and the revenues coming in. I'll just turn it right over to you, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is for through the 9 months, that ended September 30th. And then we compare it for the budget for the year, and we can see those percentages and then the differences, the variances. So, when we start off, revenues increased $2,778,000 from 2022 to 2023. The increase was primarily due to a $2,119,000 increase in residential waste collection fees, and that was primarily due to our fee increase that we implemented at the start of this year. And then also there was a $231,000 positive change in gain loss on investments, and a $241,000 increase in interest income. And so we talked about the interest income before in our investments. Excuse me. As far as the rates we're getting on those returns have improved quite a bit, and so that's one plus with some of the negatives or some of the challenges we see. But just looking at our revenues, we're pretty much on track to where we anticipated that we would be. Another area that's up just a little, about $80,000, a little over $80,000, green curbside fees, and that's a plus too. That's increased the last few years, and that program's picked up subscribers, and so that's been a good thing. And hopefully most of them stay with the program and continue in the future. So I always like a lot of our model here is we provide services over and over, and it's recurring revenue. And no matter government or outside of government, I always like that recurring revenue. And so, we provide that service weekly, and then it generates fees and revenue weekly and monthly. And so that's, I think, nice and a positive for our model here. So, any questions on revenues? Okay, we move on. The next category, personnel expenses, and they increased $627,000 from 2022. That's approximately about 9.5%. Primarily due to increased wages and salaries expense of $462,000 $1,000. We increased our pay rates, and then also we've had increased employee headcount, added a couple positions over the last year or two. Increased retirement pension expense of $76,000, and increased health insurance expense of $74,000. And so a lot of this was anticipated. We're actually a little below. When we look there at all the categories, you can go over total personnel expenses and 4 columns over 67%, and that's what we expended year to date through September. And so one thing, and I mentioned this before several times, but we still have adjustments coming for the pension expense and also OPEB adjustment that don't come until after our year end. And so there's always a potential there. They benefited us last year the way the adjustments went. They could go the other way. In fact, I think the pension one of these years is going to go the other way, I think, fairly significantly. We'll see. But just I wanted to look at, remember that expense and where we're at. So personnel, we're 67% of budget. But we'll look at that here in just a minute when we go to operating expenses and the total expenses too. So any questions on personnel expenses?
I did have one, actually. I'm looking at the overtime, and I know we're quite a bit over because we don't have all the positions filled, correct?
Right.
Are we at the point where we're worried about burning people out? I would always like to ask that question just to see where we're at on that.
It's a very good question. I would say that we could have hit that during the heavy season, but we are currently fully staffed as far as the apprentice positions have been hired, which actually did create 3 vacancies on the equipment operators. But those 3 vacancies are additional FTEs that we asked for scrap.
Okay.
So now the scrap season is over. We don't have to shift anybody over there. I would say that we're moving into a less likelihood of burning folks out. I appreciate you asking that.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say it's interesting too, because we ask during our busy time, we ask equipment operators to come in sometimes on their day off. We have some employees that really appreciate that and want to do it. And to them, they work 50, 55 hours a week, and they're grateful, hey, this is a good thing. And others, you know, they 40 is a push for them, and that's enough. And so it really varies person to person too. Because I know we have some employees that actually appreciate the overtime and view it as a benefit. So it's hard to say. Then you get into questions, what about safety and other things too, but it's something we definitely want to watch and pay attention to. Okay, next up, operating expenses, and this is where we have a lot of increases. So total operating expenses increased $783,000 in 2023 compared to 2022. There were increases in fuel expense of $116,000, maintenance expense of $221,000, landfill disposal fees of $144,000, and vendor recycling fees of $670,000. Our truck lease expense decreased $89,000, and that was really due to the fact that we leased 10 hook lift trucks this year versus 16 last year. So the number of trucks we leased decreased. Our county interlocal shared building costs decreased $99,000, and other expenses decreased $63,000. And so on part of those decreases, for example, the county interlocal shared building costs, that's a fairly significant decrease, but it's just due to the timing of when we pay a bill for security. We've not been billed for that yet this year. We paid it in September last year, and that was about $104,000. For security, I mean, we actually have a sheriff's individual here from the sheriff's office that goes around at night, that goes out through the parking lots, watches the assets, watches the building, that type of thing, and we pay for that service. And so when you see those decreases, and you just got to understand what's driving them, and that one will not last by year end, that decrease in county interlocal shared building costs. Some things to look at here, we'll talk about fuel and maintenance in just a few minutes, and also the landfill fees and recycling. But when we look at this, big picture, and kind of take a step back or look at a higher level, if we look at the total operating expenses, so far through the year, we're at 79.63% of budget on those. And so you know, you kind of look at that and go, wow, through 9 out of 12 months to 75%. Then you have to consider the timing of payments. And then also, we're through our busiest time of the year, too. We just wrapped that up, scrap, and then also with silos, the weights and that we're hauling and what we're picking up. And so we're through our busiest time of the year. But from a budget perspective, you go down there and you look at total expenses, and we're at 74.55% of the budget through this year. And so people like me watch that, and I'm really aware of it and paying attention to that. I think we'll be okay, but, you know, we're close enough this year. This is the closest we've been since I've been here by far. And so just something to be aware of as board members, and that's kind of where we're at. We'll talk about some of the expenses, and they continue to increase. We talked about them before. So as far as revenues less expenses, 49,000 positive this year. Last year, a $1.3 million negative there. And so from that standpoint, that's a positive. But like I said, the budgeted expenses, we need to watch those and just be aware of them. So any questions on any of those expenses? Like I said, we'll get into some of the details on some of the major ones here coming up. So. Okay, we'll move on. The next slide, this is the fuel expense, and this year we're up 12.35%. When we look at the last 3 years, in 2021, we were up about 8%. In 2022, 9.3%. And then, like I said, we're up over 12% this year for fuel expense. And then over to the graph on the right, that just is the cost per gallon that we're paying for diesel and for CNG. And so we can see diesel at the end of 2022, we averaged $4.76 a gallon, and that's come down to $3.79 a gallon through 9 months of this year. CNG's gone the other way. It was $1.91 at the end of 2022 for that fiscal year, and it's at $2.31. And so CNG has increased this year. Diesel has come down from what we paid in the prior year. I've shown it before, I didn't show it this time, but about 92% of what we buy, as far as just on the gallons perspective, based on volume, is CNG. And so that's the one that really had more influence on us.
I think I've asked this question before, and I'll just leave it dangling there a little bit, but I just think it's always interesting as we see these two lines coming closer and closer together, and we know full well that the diesel vehicle is much cheaper to purchase than the CNG. And historically, it's been much higher resale value too. I think that the decision was made in part for air quality, those types of things. But again, when I push back and ask really the stats on that, there is no good stats on it. Just somebody says that this is how it is. There's never been any proof that there's, because of the restrictions on diesel and those emission outputs and things like that. The question is it really that much less, you know? So I think that those are all good things that we have to keep an eye on and just understand. I don't ever think it's a good idea for us to completely go one way or the other. I know our fleets are a little bit diversified, and we put money into the CNG, the filling station and stuff. We expanded that and stuff. And anyway, I just hope that we keep enough diversity in those two things, that we don't make a total shift and then it kind of bites us at the end.
I think, too, with diesel, it's been interesting through the years, the cost of the diesel trucks related to CNG has increased the last couple of years. And so they've increased, too. I don't think that differential is as high as it was a few years ago. But then the other factor of diesel is they have, through the years, made diesel engines much cleaner. And I mean, from 25, 30 years ago to today, a diesel engine, you know, with all the emissions and things they put on it, and the requirements have made it cleaner. So it is something to look at and just definitely be aware of. So
We're still waiting on some vehicles that we haven't been able to purchase, correct?
yeah, we'll talk
Those
about
all CNG.
we'll talk about those just a minute. Yeah, the side loader on CNG. Yeah. So we did get a few pickups in this year, and so that's been good. That's at least some progress. And then for maintenance expense, just the last 2 years, I like to show history here just to give us some context. And it was interesting, in 2021, our total maintenance expense actually decreased about 3%. In 2022, we're up about 10%, and so far through this year, we're up about 8%. And we've talked about this in the past, the labor is increased, and also parts, and getting the parts. It sounds like that as far as some of the supply chain issues, they have gotten a little better. There's still issues, though. And the next graph is our refuse tons for the year, and we're really very close to last year. Last year we had 93,162, and this year 93,000 and about 900. And so our tons are really close. You can see the mix there. We talked about for this year, at the start of the year, we really took more to the transfer station, and then that's kind of balanced out a little more as we've gone along, just due to the weather and trying to avoid getting trucks stuck or that type of thing. So we took more there. As far as what we're paying right now, the transfer station is $35 a ton. The Salt Lake County landfill is $27 a ton, and Transjordan's $39 a ton. So, and we anticipate each of those is going to go up, I think, about $2 a ton next year. That's pretty close. It's an estimate.
How many tons is in a typical load?
For MSW, at the most, it can be like 7, just below 8 tons.
Is that usually where, so,
That's where we want to be, because of bridge weight and legality.
there is, so, I mean, if that, your $8 a ton was a difference between the landfill and the transfer station? I mean, obviously, there's time and the disposal, just trying to figure out where the, you know, kind of where the crossover is to make the extra mileage out there to save the dumping fees.
Yeah, there's price and proximity for every dumping facility in the valley is what we would have, absolutely. And we get that $27 a ton at the Salt Lake Valley landfill by hitting just over 20,000 tons a year. It's 20,001 ton, and we met that, so we will get the $27 for anything we deliver to that facility.
And they did give us a price benefit, trying to encourage us to go to the landfill, because otherwise, if they were close, you go to the transfer station a lot of times. And then it always varies too, depending on where we are in the valley, you know, the proximity. So one day it may not make sense to go to one location. Next up is the recycled tons, and here we're really consistent with last year. From 2020 to 2021, we had a decrease of about 5%, and that's through 9 months. In 2022, we had a decrease of about 3%, and then this year, we're really consistent. I mean, within a few tons of last year, and so that stays relatively flat there as far as any changes on it. And here is our graph. This is vendor recycling fees, what we pay our 2 vendors. It's a weighted average for those 2 vendors, and so it's not one or the other, but it considers both of them. And we can look here, you see the different colors. Gray is 2019, and then you can see how the others are labeled. In 2021, we actually did get a little money back on some of the recycling. And then in 2023, we started the year, we were about at $80 a ton, and went down, up a little, and then in September, the end of September, we were right around $60 a ton. So
Where's your crystal ball? Do you think we're gonna bounce back up, or, because if we bounce up high like we didn't, like, back up to, you know, where we're at the first of the year, then our budget is gonna be a little bit iffy for the next 3 months.
we adjusted it a little, the budget amount.
Okay.
We'll talk about that here in just a few minutes, but we did adjust it, you know, based on the conversation last time, and then we had another factor come into place.
Yeah.
Encourages us to.
Hopefully this stays a lot like that too, so for this year's budget, it doesn't drive us over.
Yeah. Well, we're already historically pretty high too, so,
Yeah.
you know, because this year we budgeted 40, and you can see where we've been. we budgeted 70C for next year, we've adjusted, and hopefully we're not 30 or 40 above that. I mean, the odds of that are pretty slim,
Yeah.
that increase, so.
Well, I just went back, I mean, in the big picture, it looks like so far this year, about 3.3 million for the landfill and transfer, basically waste disposal. The recycling fees are about $1 million. And even if, so I guess potentially if you were to change that, because we're paying about twice per ton, you might be able to save $400,000 or $500,000 that you, I know you're gonna talk about recycling later, but I just want to, in the big picture, you know, it's, you know, maybe $400,000 or $500,000 that we're spending to keep the recycling program in place.
Yeah.
Starting and stopping it, it is hard to sometimes swallow that. In fact, we got a complaint last week, is, you know, why did Scotland Heights quit making the apartment complexes have recycling? It was like, well, no one makes them, and but someone had replied back, and I suspect it might be because whoever their service provider was, or they were just no longer happy with being able to pay the extra fee for their complex. So.
And it's interesting, some residents are very willing to pay, but the property owner or the manager may not want to
Right.
make that change for that.
Okay, and then the next one, this is our cash and investment balances report. That line has stayed pretty consistent through the years where we're at as far as the graph goes. This includes all our cash and investments accounts. At the end of September, we had $8.5 million in those accounts. And then we really have to look at this cyclical, you know, when does it come in? We see the revenues, and a lot of times they come in after the quarter. So February is a big month for collections. You know, May, you can just see there when we bill, and then when we get the collections in. And so that's part of it, and then just capital expenditures that we'll talk about here in just a minute. PTIF, I just looked at that last week. I look at it every week, but it was 5.36, and so when I talk about interest income, that's the return we're getting right now on this, well, close to this. I mean, there's some different investments, and not exactly, but that's the return we're getting right now. So that helps us on the interest income side. And we have been more aware of just the rates and tried to make an effort when we have any additional cash in our operating account, we move it over, and then we'll move it back, sometimes just for 4 or 5 weeks. But, you know, if it's $500, $1,000, $1 million, that 4 or 5 weeks it starts being significant at 5%.
Yeah.
And so we tried to do that this year. The next slide is our capital expenditures budget for the year. We can see we had $5.3 million. We had 12 side load trucks that we ordered this year. We paid for 2 of those, just the engine and the chassis. And so we prepaid for 2 of those. We anticipate we'll get them probably in November, that time frame, and so we'll pay the remaining portion on those 2. The other 10, we're anticipating getting next year, April, May, hopefully, we'll see. And that's the latest and greatest, subject to change. And so hopefully we get 2 this year, and then the 10 next year. They have not canceled the order, they just delayed when they said we would get those, so.
It's a moving target.
Yes. So.
When was the last time we got all the trucks that we had ordered? In the, was it 19 or 20?
21, I believe.
I think we got it right.
21.
Okay, so we've been lagging 22 and then 23 again. How many total are we kind of behind?
We 16 replacements, and that's been deferred. So we ordered, 12 this year to make up for what we couldn't get last year, and now we're gonna have to defer that to next year.
So 16 16 are deferred, and the total is 60, or
Of the side loads?
Side loads.
Oh, you're testing my memory. I believe we're close to 60, is it 50?
So we're about-
80 in here?
about a quarter of the fleet is, maybe a little more, has been deferred, and we're keeping them longer, and the maintenance costs will be going up. I just wanted to kind of get an idea of how much we were
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
forced to defer on that stuff, because that's hard to deal with sometimes.
And when we get into the budget and Paul will review those capital purchases for next year, you'll see those dollars. And I'm hoping people can hear me online, sorry I forget to speak up, but, when Paul goes over the budget, he'll walk through the number we're gonna order for next year. Next year is the catch-up year, if we can get them all.
Yeah, the worst, it's hard on your budget, but then it also has a trickle effect in a few years from now when it's time to replace, and you have this massive amount of aged out, or, you know, that are time to replace rather than being able to just gradually replace them.
It's really.
So many fleet people are having the same
Yeah.
problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had the conversation, and we would prefer to order approximately 80 a year, and
Yeah.
do that every year. And just keep those coming, and you have a good balance of the age in your fleet.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's easy to just bring them in, and then we have that many to sell, and it just works out better, I think, but we don't live in an ideal world, so we'll deal with it.
We've had to pivot a lot.
And these funds that we're saving for this expense, are they in an interest-bearing account or an investment account, these funds?
Well, we really have investments in two different accounts. One's PTIF, and that's the Public Treasury Investment Fund, state of Utah. And then we use Diane's investment, account, and they're, you know, I guess approved to
Money management.
the Money Management Act, and we use them, and so we're getting interest or return on those funds.
See, that's the only upside, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is a positive right now,
Right
although
now.
with some of the investment, that was a little rough a year ago, and
Yeah.
so, you know, it just depends on where you're at in the market, so. But we are getting, you know,
Plus inflation on those new vehicles is probably
Yes.
outpacing whatever
Oh,
we're getting.
yeah.
Exactly.
significant, so, yeah.
A new world.
So when we look at this, though, that's the 12 silo trucks, what we spent, we anticipate paying for those other two, this year, and then the 10 will carry forward to next year, and then on the budget for next year. 3 light-duty trucks, we had budgeted, we actually had an opportunity to get 4, and we hadn't gotten some of those in the past, so we went ahead and got those. I think we got them for a really good price. They're 1-ton diesel pickups, and well, a couple of them are flatbed, I should say, for the trailer program. But you look at that, we're paying about $55,000 a piece for a 1-ton diesel pickup, which is really good. And so we had that opportunity, and we knew at that point we weren't going to get all the silo trucks in. And so even though that exceeded the budget just for those trucks, we went ahead and did it with the other things that were going on.
It's not an extra truck for $12,000 essentially. Because you budgeted for 3,
Yeah. Well, like I said, we get those and then you need it.
Yeah.
And so, and we do get, you know, through the state contract, I keep wondering when that's gonna go up, because I think to get an F-350 for $57,000, so 1-ton, that's, a diesel, that's ridiculously low.
Yeah.
But that's a really good deal for us, and it's benefited us, you know, having that contract and working through it. Then we purchased 1 used hook lift truck, that was on, I think, the first quarter. And so this is kind of where we're at. We can see that we haven't, we're not close to expending what we budgeted. Hopefully next year, though.
Yeah.
This is the certification balances as of September 30th, and you can just see the amount that we have certified and then the amount outstanding. In the right column there, you can see that we did certify more in 2023. That amount's increasing, and I think part of that's due to the fees increasing too, and so that amount's going to go up. For 16, 17, and 18, that's all the same individual that's got an extension from the county, and I'd like to clean that up, actually, but that's where we're at on that, so we don't want individual.
The good news is it's been certified, so we will get that money eventually.
And then this is a slide on refunds. We were asked a year or two ago to provide this information on a quarterly basis. And we can see, 6,000 for the quarter, that's really low. Last quarter, we were at 27,000, and in the first quarter, we were at 9,000. So the second quarter, we're usually gonna have more because we send everyone the paper bill, and then also there was a fee increase this year that got people's attention. And just, people see the scrutinized things more at that time period. 6,000 is really not, very much as far as refunds go. I think we had one that was paid in error that was about $1,000, but other than that, not really a lot of refund issues for this past quarter.
You're training them well,
Yeah.
Paul.
Well, we'll see. It's just nice that we can do that too. I said before, I appreciate that we can do that and get them back.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul. Any other questions about the, third quarter report, members of the board? Thank you, Paul. Appreciate your great work on that. And, now the big item, we have before us, and we'll have Pam and Paul and Hazel discuss the 2024 tentative budget and fee schedule. And just for newer board members, we're seeking a tentative adoption of this today. The final adoption would occur at our annual meeting, which is on Monday evening on November 13th at 6 p.m. So this is a tentative adoption only that we're discussing. So Pam and Paul and Hazel, if you want to dive into the tentative budget.
Sure, I'll do, the narrative piece, and then Paul, of course, will take over with his magical numbers that he has really, put together so well for us. Last month, we went over the proposed budget. Not a lot has changed since then, but just to recap, we're gonna continue on with our service level. Renee, do you mind just scrolling down? Thank you. So weekly garbage and recycling collection, the seasonal container reservation program, and we're budgeted for 60 containers a day. And that is based on the staffing level that we're able to recruit and retain through that season. The seasonal services, right now, leaf bag programs going on in our communities. And then in January, the curbside Christmas tree will happen. We have the landfill vouchers, and now with the QR code, we're seeing people shift over to that, as well as still using the hard copy, which is fine. We have the 7 central blast sites that are out there, and then we're providing the discounted trailer rental for both bulk and green. And the subscription programs for green and blast, I don't want to forget those. Those are a separate fee for those of us that like to use those additional cans for any recyclables that we generate.
Pam, I have a question just really quickly. Now that we've got a unique QR code for each city using the vouchers, correct?
I don't know if it's for every city, Renee. I think right now Taylorsville's the test site. Do you want to?
Yes, your city is our test site right now. We envisioned in January to roll out a unique QR code for the cities, and what that entails is that's for code enforcement.
Correct.
Where it's unlimited amount of QR vouchers that can be given to a resident versus the residential QR code, which is a separate code, so that we can track how many residents are actually utilizing the program versus code enforcement.
Do you are you going to build that for city quarterly, yearly?
That's a good question. This is a new thing for us, so I think whatever works for the city, maybe monthly invoice, quarterly, I think it's not gonna be a huge use
Well,
that I'm aware of.
we hope and we hope not, right?
Right, yeah. So I think whatever works for the city's
Okay.
budget.
Good
It's
to know.
very flexible.
Well, the good thing is we can have that reporting to show specifically how many, so then you can decide.
And it's a great program to really specify who's getting those and using. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, thank you. It was great for Kathleen Richens to bring that up and use with code enforcement. It was a great idea to So, we have the increasing costs that we're gonna continue to try to manage. We're always looking at efficiencies and ways that we can improve and, reduce miles if it's all possible, because that is our biggest, cost, is out there with the sideload trucks, running from route to route. The only thing that we've really added since last month is to, one of the things we're gonna explore is the possibility of a new database system. We have a database system that's been in place since 2014, end of 13, when we first separated. And it can be cumbersome with timekeeping versus payroll, so there's two systems that, basically we have to do a lot of manual work with that. And since we've grown with number of employees, that has really come to the forefront of, I think we need to look at something maybe a little bit better and more efficient. So that's something that we'll explore. Would it be as big as the customer database to make sure everything's interactive? Right now, we don't know. But we do know that we need a human resource information system that's gonna work and a payroll system that will communicate, with its general ledger and then billing. So that would be the exploration. If we do get into any kind of a RFP and looking for a purchase, we would bring that back to you so that you're aware. What we would do is try to absorb that into our budget as best we can, if that's where we head. And I don't know, Hazel, I know you've been exploring some of this. Do you want to add anything? I know it's been a little bit of a headache to.
Yeah, so I've had a few companies, ACOM and ADP, approach us actually. And so I've kind of done a little bit of exploration, 30 minutes meeting with them, but told them that we'll be putting out an RFP, to everyone. It would be really helpful, I think, to update the HR part. It is available with Casell, which we use for finance and budgeting and utility billing. But HR has a few different needs. But obviously, we want to make sure that we've got something that works well with finance and Casell.
No questions on that, we'll just keep rolling. And then just number 8, to just remind everyone that we are, asking for a fee increase for the town of Brighton residents, going up $2 per home per month. Our board member Keith Zusman is out of the country right now, but he and I have been texting back and forth, and, I'll be visiting them probably next month during a council meeting, just to make sure everything's, transparent. I explained the why. He's been doing a great job on our behalf of communicating that, but I want to make sure that they hear directly from me on that, the need to increase that fee to cover the cost for services in the canyon. And that will also be for the Big Hotwood Canyon residents as well, so the unincorporated Hotwood Canyon council member stream, just so you're aware.
The whole canyon then?
Pardon?
Is the whole canyon?
Yes. Go ahead, sorry. And then personnel highlights, last month we proposed a 4% COLA increase, cost of living adjustment, and we're putting that in for the tentative adoption now, with a 2% merit increase on an employee's annual anniversary date. For those employees that are at the top of their range, then we want to continue with that lump sum payment that goes onto their paycheck, and it is taxed, of course, because it is income. And then, of course, we're increasing the wages for our seasonal temp staff, which majority of which is on scrap, and requesting to add 1 CDL equipment operator. I'm requesting that we may postpone hiring in that position, because right now we have 3 vacancies. We're heading into the slow season, as I mentioned, scrap's over, so our operations team is evaluating, do we need to fill all of those 3 seats right now? So just so you know, the allocations are there, but we may hold off on filling all of them, especially because we have a very tight budget, and if we don't have a need, then we don't want to do it right now. If that makes sense.
I have a strange question for you. I was thinking about this morning about last night. Melissa Cotter, right? She, obviously this is her world that she lives in. We are in competition always for these CDL drivers, right? And we look at ways to try and figure out how to recruit them or keep them, those types of things, right? And a lot of times it's just salary or, you know, culture or whatnot, but my experience right now is only in the governmental side of things, right? Because the boards that we're on and our cities and stuff, we see the deficiencies in that and we see the struggle with that. But our competition must be the private market, right? Construction and things like that. So are they dealing with exactly the same thing? They can't keep their CDL drivers also? Or are they providing some sort of incentive that we're not aware of? You know what I mean?
I do.
Are we stacking up to the competition? And if so, is there another way to have retention besides just salary increases?
Yeah, well, benefits is a big piece of what we have, and getting into the URS system and understanding younger generations may or may not see that as a value right now. The private haulers do offer an incentive for people that sign on. I think one of the biggest things for us is our schedule. We are Monday through Friday, and the drivers have a set schedule, and they work 4/10. If we have a need for overtime and they would like that overtime, then they go ahead and work it. But having a 4/10 schedule, and it's a rotating day off, so every equipment operator in our organization has a 4-day weekend within a 5 to 6 week time period. Plus they get vacation, they have sick leave if they need it. So I think our benefit package is really robust and a draw for people to come to it. The other thing to touch on is the pay. So when Melissa went out to markets this year, the max that was being offered was 5%. If I was asking, and you all didn't even blink at me asking for a 6% increase. So we are a little bit above what others are doing out there. So I'm hoping that will sustain us because, as you know, every year, mid-year, we kind of hit a lull with recruitment and hiring. This year, I think we did pretty well. With those vacancies that we have, I think we have 10 folks in the wings that have applied for an equipment operator position.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So, yeah, I mean, right now we have
That's refreshing.
more supply
Yeah.
than demand. Yeah, and that can have a season as well. Right now, construction is slowing down. The dirt haulers are slowing down, so that's generally when we see folks coming in from construction. I found that folks that come in from private hauling companies and construction, once they get in, they get the schedule, they really love it. You know, oh gosh, they really don't have to work 40 hours, or actually, we have an incentive, efficiency incentive where equipment operators get paid 40 hours even if they work 36. So we pay them.
Good job, then.
Yeah, so that's a big draw as well.
And I guess, and then are we marketing that through our recruiting process? You know what I mean? Is our marketing really robust that it helps people understand that? And I know that younger people sometimes it's just about putting food on the table. So sometimes you're asking, they just don't understand. No, they don't understand it. It's just that they can't apply it in their life right now because they're just trying to make ends meet kind of thing. But it's, I don't know. I'm not suggesting you're not marketing them. It's just that if we can make sure we're really marketing those things so that construction was really slow even through the summer this year. So that makes sense with the other 10 people because that has slowed down quite a bit this year. But anyway, sorry to prolong the meeting. I was just curious about if we're really, how we are competing against that private market as far as marketing our job.
Great question.
Yeah. And I feel that we are.
Good.
Yeah. Especially the pension is attractive in private industry, you don't see that at all. So.
You know, and even private industry, sometimes you don't see COLAs.
Right.
You know what I mean? In government, it's like every year we talk about COLAs, but, you know, it's like my husband's job or, you know, it's like, did you get a raise this year? I don't know. You know, and those kind of things, you don't see COLAs and everything, so, yeah.
And I can say with the folks that come in from the private industry, our equipment, even though it's aging, is really well taken care of, and it runs. And if their truck might be down, they get another piece of equipment to go out and complete their route. In private hauling, you are paid sometimes by what you pick up. And with us, like I said, it's a steady paycheck, steady job. So I think that's, yeah, and we'll count that down.
How often do we actually have a truck out in the field that goes down?
Oh, out in the field?
Yeah, you have to send a rescue truck.
For a tow truck, it's not very often. For a truck that might have something go, you know, mechanically wrong and we can fix it on the road quickly, that could happen almost daily, especially in the heat during the day.
Okay, so you'll send, you've
But
got a,
not every truck,
Right.
but if I was gonna take an average, maybe one truck a day during the heat.
so that's something you have a crew that goes out and actually takes care of it. But there's not a lot of times where you've got a truck that's down for hours or have to.
Not very often. Not very often.
I mean, that's,
Hi, if anyone can hear me, this is Councilman Barney from Magna. We have lost sound online.
Hi, Councilman. This is Abby. I'm with the county and I can't hear either.
I am just about to text Pam.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't hear you.
I still don't have audio. Does anybody else?
Nope.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, yay, all right,
How long is that?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why don't we go ahead, actually, let me ask,
Yes.
those listening, when did it cut out? When did you stop hearing sound?
The last thing I remember you guys talking about was not needing to hire more for scrap because we are ending the scrap season right now.
So it's that good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if, Pam, if you wanna give us a Reader's Digest version of everything we're talking about.
My water.
Hit it again.
Okay, yeah. So, part of that was the, FTE that we're requesting for next year that we may not need to, fill until maybe springtime when we start back up with the heavy season and scrap starts up again. And I think part of what I had covered was the fact that we're gonna raise the town of Brighton. I don't know if you heard that, board member Cyrus, did you catch that part?
I think I did.
Okay, just wanna make sure I don't repeat. So go ahead and scroll down, I think we're good to go down. The tier 1, tier 2 of the URS, I think everyone might remember, or Paul will remind you that we, had an adjustment this year, but it could adjust the other way next year, so he'll get into that when we get into the, budget amounts. Are we good to go then, I think? We'll say we are.
Yeah, a lot of this was similar to last meeting.
Yeah. I think the only thing I covered that is that we're gonna focus on IT and cybersecurity this year for training. I think that was about it.
Okay, great, why don't we go ahead, Paul?
Okay, you move it forward, please. Okay, and so, this is, our costs and revenues in a similar format at a summary level. And we can see across the top there the different categories in the years. Over in the fourth column, that's the preliminary budget that we're looking at today. We had a few adjustments from the last meeting. The first adjustment was we added $50,000 revenues for charges for non-residential fees, mainly front load services, but also I think there's some side load in there too. And so we increased that $50,000, the revenues. Personnel expenses, we increased about $49,000, $50,000. And that was due to the fact that we went back and looked at, our employee awards, and a lot of those had increased, and some of those needed to be increased in the budget. They just increased recently, and we needed to increase those in the budget. And then also there's benefits that are tied in with them too. So that was $50,000. As a recycling expense, we increased that $143,500, and that was $7 a ton that we increased. We talked about $5 at our last meeting, but then also, then we got a notice from one of our vendors that their base rate's going up, $5. And so we thought, well, we'll look at this and kind of look at the average, and that's why we went to 7 on that. So, I did also round everything. I round to the nearest hundred. It just makes it cleaner and easier and really doesn't have a material difference. So, a couple things too, we talked about just in the financial report, the OPEB and also the URS pension. We get those numbers usually from the actuaries. It'll be usually February of next year, and so there could be adjustments there to 2023. Another thing with URS, and we looked at the rates on the previous sheet, but we just got an email the past week that they're having a meeting this week on the rates that we remit to them every pay period. And so we'll see what they say, because they're on a different annual basis, a fiscal basis than us. Their fiscal year end is 7/1 to 6/30, whereas we're January 1st to 12/31. And so we'll see what they say, because I just continued forward with what we know now and what we've seen. But that could be an adjustment too, but we'll find out more about that this week. Hazel and I are listening on that. So. But I don't know what questions we have here. Those were the 3 changes. We've talked about the other things, the other categories before, so we can, review the capital expenditures on the next sheet if there's no questions here.
Yeah, any questions to this point?
We are fully funding our pensions, right?
Yes. Every pay period, we remit an amount to URS. And so it's that percentage times each employee's pay. And so every pay period, we're funding that. What comes after year end, there's not dollars that we pay, it's more of an actuarial adjustment. But it still shows up as an expense or an adjustment, a positive expense. And so it's not really a cash adjustment, but it can still show that we exceed the budget due to that, it's benefited us. But the cash goes out every payroll, we remit an amount to URS. So we fund that regularly.
Okay.
So this is the tentative capital expenditures that we have, and we can see there what we projected for next year. 4 side load trucks, that would be additional new trucks, 3 light duty trucks, 1 hook lift truck, that would be used in the scrap program, and then 1 cab over truck, and those are used in container delivery and repair. They're out in the field every day with drivers that go out and, replace cans, repair cans, go look at cans, those types of things. And so, as far as the portion we had originally, it was $2.2 million, but then the carryover from 2023, we anticipate 8 side load trucks, the full cost of those, and then 2 side load trucks, the bodies. And so that's the carryover we're anticipating from 2023. So total next year, if you get everything in, would be about $6 million, which would be a really, really significant year for us. But then you have to remember, we've under-expended the last few years, the last couple of years in that category.
May I ask a question about that? So the inability to get trucks causing us to keep them longer, is that informing or changing in any way our replacement plans for trucks in the future? Are we deciding that we can keep them longer or that we should not keep them longer because maintenance costs are way too high? This unfortunate situation where we can't get them, is that causing us to rethink replacement cycles?
Well, I think we looked at that a few years ago, and we conscientiously started wanting to keep some trucks longer, at least to sample and kind of experiment with that, because historically before that, we were selling trucks at 5 to 6 years. and we looked at what the private haulers do and what we were doing and the cost, and then what we were getting on the sales price, and it made sense to keep them longer. The unknown we didn't know was, what are the maintenance costs in our world? You don't know the maintenance costs, and so we ended up keeping trucks longer before this happened. And it wasn't because we knew there was gonna be a supply chain disruption, it was because we wanted to test out and sample and see what are our maintenance expenses. We've looked at those, and so far they don't seem to be going up unusually high. But where, you know, you get out 6, 7 years, where do you get that point? Is it 10 years, is it 12 years, is it 8.5? And we're looking at that, but we're really not out. I think the oldest ones we have are about 8 years now. Is that about right, Pam?
2014, we have two from
Okay,
2014.
yeah, so that'd be, they're coming at 9 years.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at that because we wanted to look at that anyway, just to see, does it make sense to buy trucks and keep them for 5 years? And then historically, I think that did, at one time, because the value we were getting when we sold the trucks too. I mean, I go back and look, when I first started, we were selling diesel trucks for like 110,000. We were buying them for 220, use them for 5 years, and sell them for 110. That's a lot different, you know, than buying a truck for 300,000 and then selling it for 50, 5 or 6 years later. And so there's different pieces moving here. It's not just we can't get trucks, it's also what do we want to do. But like I said earlier, we've had several meetings on this, and I think we're in agreement, all of us, is we prefer to buy 8 trucks a year. And even with that, our age is getting a little older, just if we need that. So I think it's something we just need to watch, and in my mind, it's still to be determined on the maintenance side. I don't think they've gone up significantly yet, but you know there's gonna come a day, you know, vehicles, machines, you know, last forever. And then the other thing to keep in mind too is when we have new trucks or newer trucks and the older trucks aren't gonna get used as much. They'll get used when we have a breakdown or when you're kind of forced to use them. But if there's a choice, we're going to use the newer trucks too.
Which extends their life.
Yes. Yeah, and then it's kind of, you start looking at per truck and mileage and you go, well, we didn't have much maintenance on these, and you know, well, we didn't drive them much. And so there's different factors.
Yeah, that certainly can change it. There aren't any fresh new trucks to drive.
Paul, I have a question on the carryover vehicles from 2023. I noticed that the numbers for capital expenditures for next year are somewhat general and ending in zeros, but we have the side load trucks, the price has a $802 ending and then $720, and I'm assuming those are like invoice prices that have been locked in.
Yes.
I mean, are they gonna charge us more because the market's increased over the last year, or
We're not anticipating that. In fact, the ones we paid this year, we paid, well, the payment we made so far matched up with what we agreed to. But we did have that case a couple of years ago where a vendor came back and said, well, you know, you said this and you committed and we committed, but now it's time to change. So we don't anticipate, I mean, based on the information we have right now, and I'm.
we have a contract then?
Yes.
Okay.
But they can still, there's some wiggle room in there for them. So I don't anticipate the change, but it can happen.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
And, you know, once we go through this process and it's tentatively adopted, if you tentatively adopt a tentative budget, then we would place the order. So we get it in early and get those, numbers, basically they'll dedicate those lines for us. And we'll hope.
Yeah, because those big trucks,
Hope that
it's an interesting world, but they're way out. I mean, they're planning, we're trying to get, they call it allocations, but, you know, 10 months out and that type of stuff. It's not like they make them and stick them on the lot and hope they can sell them. They're making them with an end user in mind and a commitment in place. And then this is just the expenses, our expenses by category. We can see there personnel is large, disposal fees, maintenance, fuel, and then the recycling, vendor recycling fees. So. And so this is an updated tentative cash projection. We talk about this sheet fairly often and just to kind of project and try to see where we're gonna be as far as cash goes. And, you know, cash for operations, but also cash in the sense of planning for fee increases and looking at that and trying to, you know, plan for it and not be surprised in the future. So the first three categories are actual historical numbers that are there in kind of the blue shaded area. An estimate for 2023, and then the preliminary budget for 2024, and then we have projected for the next 3 years. I did go back and change this based upon those the three adjustments we had on the tentative budget. And then also we went in here and on the operational expenses, I went in and changed that to 98% of the budget amount. And the reason to do that was just where we're at this year. And our budget, you know, we're getting really close to the budgeted expenses, and we thought, I don't know if it's being conservative or not, I hope it is, but we changed that number to 98%. And so it's the preliminary budget times 98% is that number here in yellow, and then also for the next 4 years. And so the line to me, kind of the summary line, is 3 lines from the bottom, ending cash and investment balances. And so we can see where we're at the end of 2023, we're projecting about a $10.5 million cash and investment balance. And then next year, $5.3 million, and then 2025, about $1 million. That's assuming we get the trucks that we've ordered, and so we'll see how that plays out. And then down below that line, we have cash, that cash balance over our operational expenses. That's just a ratio there. And then down on the bottom line is the net OPEB liability that we show, and that's the number we get from the actuaries. And that's why I haven't changed that out 2023, 24. I'm just using what was provided last year. And so that liability is one, they get a lot of data from us, and the actuaries look at it and say, hey, this is what we're projecting. We want to keep cash on hand to cover that. I don't think it would ever come due at one point in time, unless if we closed, you know, ended that program. But we still need to keep that portion of cash on hand and available. So with OPEB too, it's for retirees, and I think we have lost 1 or 2 this year. Whether that we're doing insurance, and so that number will go down. We're not taking on new participants with that. That was a benefit that ended in the past, and so over time, I anticipate that liability will probably come down. It kind of depends on what medical costs do too. So.
And I know last month, Alderman Bracken, you mentioned restricted cash, so that will fall in that line. Okay, so for the residential fees, we talked about the town of Brighton, going up $2 per home per month. And then the special service fees, Paul touched on that. We're increasing the front load services. This is for the collections at city halls, county facilities, et cetera. That's gone up 10%, and then 18% for the recycling containers. That's to account for the increased processing fees. That's why there's a difference there between garbage and recycling being a little higher. Recycling on the front load has historically been a lower fee for those people that are using that. So we're bumping that up to cover that processing fee cost. And then so county facilities with our interlocal, we did increase those fees. And it did vary depending on the division's use. Some divisions, it was a 9% increase, some it was almost a 50%, just depending on what they were using. And that also accounted for the increase of revenue. And then going forward into the tentative fee.
I'm going to my car.
Okay. Well, I assume that they can still hear us.
Yeah, can you still hear us, Tom and Eric and company?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
Yes.
go ahead, thanks.
All right, going down to the fee schedule, we're asking And I did put in red font, anything that is increasing. And if you scroll down just a little bit more, that's the residential, and only the town of Brighton is gonna go up this year. For the front load, as I mentioned, 10% for garbage and 18% for recycling. Scrolling down a little bit more.
Ken, so Keith is out of town. Have you discussed this with him? That he knows, he would maybe one that would want to comment on this, but I don't know if you've had a discussion with him, and he's cool with it.
Yeah, Matt, Paul, and I sat down with him a few months ago and went over the actual costs and the revenue that we receive. Also noting that we do service the businesses up there. They use our compactor, our garbage compactor, as well as the front load cans. Those fees will be going up to them as well, just to equal out the revenue and expense. So we did review that with him a few months ago. He's talked to the mayor and the council, and they are very aware that this is coming. And then I will make a personal visit to their, one of their council meetings in November, so that everyone is aware.
Where is that dividing line for Big Cottonwood?
It's a good question. I believe, and I don't know how familiar you are with, but Cardiff Fork, there's those cabins that are up in there. We put in a seasonal container for those cabins. I think it's just below there. There are probably, and I'm just ballparking, 15 to 18 homes that are still in the unincorporated county.
Yeah, I know which ones those are. I just I wasn't sure where in the canyon that cutoff line was, if we're coming down to the mouth or where that fell.
So those homes are between Storm Mountain and Cardiff.
Got it.
And there is one that's an HOA, and we build them separately. That's Lance Lyon or Maxfield Road. I only know because I frequent that canyon in the summertime a lot. It's a good excuse to go out for a ride and visit those sites.
Yeah. Official duty.
Yeah. And then if you'll scroll down, there were two different sections to the fee schedule. And so we as staff are asking to abolish the district pricing, just so that we can make everything an equal playing field, and and us as staff, it's a lot less confusing, and administrative work will decrease, to some degree by getting rid of it as well. And, so just to point out, the, 14-yard roll-off for municipalities that use that particular service for cleanup or resident, code enforcement, that fee will stay at $125, I believe, but what we're doing is limiting the tonnage. It'll 1 ton, and then anything that's over a ton, we're gonna charge, the respective fee for whichever landfill we deliver that to. We're also asking to plug in, the other fees for mattresses, tires, refrigerators. There have been some of those that have been put in for municipal cleanups. So we just want to capture that cost. Okay, no questions. I think that's it on that. We would, Mr. Chair, we would ask for a tentative adoption of the tentative budget, and I will clean up wherever it says preliminary. I apologize, Paul, you mentioned that, and I missed that.
I think you want an actual adoption of the tentative budget, not a.
Yeah, and the agenda says tentative adoption of the 2020 tentative budget fee schedule, so I think.
is really weird, that's how it is.
It really says.
You have to say you're approving the tentative budget, you're tentatively approving the tentative budget.
Okay.
It's actually how it goes.
Oh, that's interesting, so, okay, so,
Because you're not permanently approving.
Well, I think we
it.
maybe ought to do something possibly.
I'll tell you what, speaking as a lawyer myself, when we get lawyers involved, it's our fault, so Rachel and I will take.
I didn't draft it.
Rachel would not have drafted that, but,
No.
okay, so it's requested that we, tentatively adopt the 2024 tentative budget fee schedule. Any other comments or questions?
I can make that,
Okay, all right. Laura, you making the?
and yeah, I'd be happy to, and we want a dollar amount from that, correct? Do we normally do that?
I don't know that we normally have a dollar amount, other than just as
What's
it's presented, might be the safest way to do it.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. All right, I move that we tentatively approve the tentative budget for 2024 as presented.
Tentatively second.
We have a motion and a tentative second.
I'll legitimately second, I'm sorry.
All right, so, can we do this by voice vote, or we don't need to do? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Right, any opposed? All right, the tentative, or the 2024 tentative budget and fee schedule is tentatively adopted, and we will bring this up. This will be the chief agenda item at our meeting on the 13th of November. So, okay, I think that, and so this is, again, just to confirm the date and time for the public hearing. It's November 13th, 6:00 p.m. here in this chamber. So is that going to be virtual as well for board members?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can participate electronically.
Okay, and,
Hang on,
yes,
sorry. Is that true for residents and citizens as well, for the public?
Yes,
They can attend.
online or in person,
Okay.
either way.
yes, good point. So that's typically a fairly short meeting, because there's, the agenda will simply include the public hearing on the tentative budget and fee schedule, possible adoption, and then considering rescheduling our December meeting. Christmas Day actually might be really fun. Do a white elephant exchange. Think about that.
From the recycling spot.
Think about that before November 13th. Okay,
We're not gonna do any other informational discussion on the 13th?
Well, you mean as far as like
I
a
guess
general,
it's not that far away from now, but, yeah.
you mean like a general manager's report, or?
It's not, probably not gonna affect me much. I'm gonna be in the Caribbean somewhere. So,
Oh, okay.
But,
Well, that was gonna be your recognition for folks that are retiring from the board.
You may have to do it sooner.
just send you a picture of my retiring outfit.
Okay, so we'll watch,
We'll think of you.
we'll watch for that agenda, that will be circulated, and now let's, move on to item 3.5, general manager's report, Pam.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with the high level, because I know we're getting pressed on time. You may recall that we launched a recycling survey to gain residents' input on, the costs are going up, and we want to sustain our service level. So the introduction right on the survey said that you as a board met, and wanted to continue on with our service levels with weekly garbage, weekly recycling. We called it a courtesy container scrap program and landfill voucher program, leaf bag, Christmas tree, trailer rentals, et cetera. And, that we asked for feedback. So these are just some highlights for you. The entire survey, as well as looking at comparisons from 2019 recycling survey are on our website. Renee put a link right on the home page if you want to go in and look at everything in detail. So the highlights are 93% of the respondents, overall were satisfied with the recycling services. 93%, understand I rounded these up, report that recycling is important. 83% are confident about what they can put into the can is actually recycling or recyclable, which I thought was a really good confidence level. 95% of the respondents support weekly recycling. And understanding this was the first time we asked about, do you support weekly recycling? And 95% said
Was that just yes or no, or weekly, or?
just yes or no.
Okay.
And then by community, you can see right here, each community, I think there were, Magnet and Kearns that were 92%. But overall, and by majority, there was a 95% support for weekly recycling. You can see each of your communities there. Immigration was 100%. About that. If there's no questions, I'll just roll. That's okay. I want to get into staffing levels. As I mentioned, we were fully staffed, and then we hired all of the apprentice positions, all of which were internal with, one that was more of the probationary period with Jason Walsh. He came to us with training experience. He's actually provided CDL and, DOT training in the past. He rose to the top of the candidates. We had some really good, stellar internal candidates. It was a hard, selection process. But we do have Fred Pacheco as one of our trainers, Daniel Bergener, and then, Jason Walk as the coordinator position. The two apprentices, you might have mentioned before, but Lori Jolly and Jesus Becerril have been hired in those apprentice spots. Now we have 3 equipment operator vacancies, and I already went through, we may or may not fill all of those. And then just to introduce and welcome Justin Tuff, who has joined us, on Wednesday, October 11th, and he's here in the room. Justin, would you mind standing up? And he has come with 21 years of experience, with Rocky Mountain Recycling Services, and most recently, I believe it was it 8 years as their transportation director?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about you and your experience, Justin?
My name is Justin Tuff. Good morning. 21, 22-ish years in the recycling transportation industry. Started as a driver. I had my CDL for about 23 years. Started at Rocky Mountain Recycling as a driver. Quickly worked my way into the office as a dispatcher for about a year. Fleet manager over the 11 western states, an OTR fleet, general pickup, and then worked my way into the director of transportation for the last 8 years, since about 2015. About 65 drivers under my direction there at one time when we were serving the 11 western states of all the Walmarts, Home Depots, et cetera. And lots of fun in the transportation industry.
Thank you for joining the crew here.
Yeah.
Good to have you. Wow.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it. I asked him to attend and told him I might put him on the spot, so I don't know if you remember that last part. Anyway, good to have, Justin with us. He's also very familiar with our GIS system, GPS, which he understands he's over the largest part of our services with that curbside garbage program. And I have no doubt he'll help with some efficiency that way. Moving on to, we had a question last month come up about the merchant bank fees. And I'm just gonna give you a high level. I think you all are familiar, at least if you were part of the resident, if you were a resident in 2013, when we first left Salt Lake County, you got your first bill in 2015, but we noticed residents to go ahead and let it go. We didn't have a billing system. I'm going too fast here. Bottom line is we were noticed as an organization we were gonna have to start billing for our services. Previously it was on property tax notice. We still have certification and lien rights, thank goodness. Paul showed you, I mean, we have $2.5 million that's due to us through the lien process. We do not pay any fees for that. We actually get penalty fees back from residents that would be tacked on for late fees, penalty fees, et cetera. And we are like first on the list when a property is certified. We get our funds first. Really a nice benefit since we need to keep the services going and pick up the waste. The other way that we bill residents basically is we mail out a billing statement to everyone in the first quarter for, in April for the first quarter fees. Some residents have themselves set up on auto pay through express bill pay. We do pay a fee for that as well as 49 cents per transaction. Roughly, the total fees, if I have it correct, is just about between $265,000 and $270,000 for fees. And then I think you asked for percent by transaction. Believe it or not, we still get some cash, but it's 1% of what we get as far as people walking in that pay cash. We get checks, we get locks. The lockbox is when a resident mails their check to Zion. If they have their payment voucher with it, Zions can easily process that through lockbox, there is a fee. But if it does not go with their payment voucher, then there has to be some research that goes along with that, a little bit of a higher cost. Credit card payments, of course, are very popular, and that type of payment has increased over time. We're seeing more and more residents increase that means of payment. I'll scroll down a little bit, Renee. As I mentioned, the certification process, there's almost 14,000 accounts that were certified. And then considerations, as I mentioned, the credit card is increasing as far as the popularity, and people wanting to pay online through credit card or call in our office. Our customer service folks do take payments over the phone, and we have protections in place to make sure that their card numbers are protected. And then, in looking at other districts and what do districts do as far as a convenience fee, I couldn't find a district that is charging a convenience fee. I talked to Kearns Improvement District, they used to do that, but they stopped, and the reason they stopped is I didn't really realize this, but they were actually taking the payments and processing them internally with their own staff. And that's why they charged the convenience fee, because it was costing them more money internally. So when they shifted over to using some of these vendors, Express, Payment Tech, I have to go back up and look at the others, but at any rate, those vendors are all under state contract, and they are limited to what they can charge us. So there is like a 2% maximum, I believe, on one or two of those vendors, and then others that are not allowed to charge us a higher fee, if that makes sense. And that's the benefit of the state contract. So Kearns Improvement got rid of their convenience fee. They basically put it into their costs and pass that on through their regular fees. At this time, that would be our preference, is that we continue on and just make sure we account for that when we come to you next year, looking at a fee increase for 2025.
Well, it seems like we do charge them a fee because it's not part of the fees they pay us for garbage, so we're recouping it. And there are some people that maybe subsidize and other people fee a little bit, but a very narrowing amount of people, because it seems like the broad amount of people are paying with a credit card. So they pay it with their monthly fee for garbage, essentially.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. Thank you.
Doesn't it seem like it's becoming ubiquitous, though, in like our property tax bills are due? And if we pay that with a credit card, it's a 2% fee, 2% upcharge. In Sandy, we bill for waste management. So the bill comes from us, not from waste management, and we apply a fee if someone's using a credit card or debit card. It just seems like more and more and more. I mean, isn't that, if you go online to pay, I don't know, it seems like it's everyone. I didn't come prepared with, but.
Yeah, it used to always be included in the price, and that used to be the way all contracts were set up, but people are starting to realize that there's been swipe fees on credit cards forever.
Yeah.
And merchants are getting less, instead of just including them and passing them on and through, like what Sherry was saying, they're tacking on that little bit, that 2 or the 3 or the 4%. On the flip side, how many of you are actually using a credit card that doesn't have points or miles or rebates? So
Yeah.
that could be your nice big, probably more important election than what we're going to do, next year. Do you want to keep all your points and rebates and benefits of your card and the higher swipe fees, or should we get rid of both and maybe? That's a way beyond this, but you're right. It's everyone. It's every time. Oh, look, I get to pay an extra $40 to so and so because I think that was Wasatch County. I paid my taxes yesterday.
And along those lines, I'm curious with Paul too, so I will, just because I'm such a tightwad, when I'm paying a bill online and it says you can do an EFT or ACH and incur no fee, or you can use your debit card or credit card and incur a fee, I'll choose the first one every time, right? Yeah. So isn't there an advantage to us to wanna encourage our payers to use EFT or ACH? So isn't there an incentive to do that, and isn't there a benefit to us that we would wanna provide that incentive? I'm concerned about automatic payment. Yeah.
Well, on the flip side, everybody, however you're doing your payment transaction, there is a cost of labor to process that payment. You know, whether it's somebody sitting in an office right down here stamping a check and putting it in the billing system versus somebody that you contract with, like the express bill pay, where they're charging the fee and they're getting that labor expense. So as a customer of Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District, I mean, I'm always looking for the free one too, because it's like you're asking me for money and I'm providing you a payment, but now you're gonna charge me. So at what point do we say, this is the cost of doing business? And at what point is, this is convenient for the customer, but less convenient for us as Wasatch Front? So which one of those is the preferred method for us, that we prefer to get the payment on, where we can keep our costs to the smallest amounts?
Yeah.
That is kind of more of a question, right? Like, because I send my bill through my bank bill pay, so they mail a check. And based on this, I'm like, oh, so you guys actually have to research my check when it shows up, unless they're doing it like the power company, or a mortgage company, where they get it the next day because they realize that we get a lot of these payments every month. Maybe we should just make it electronic from the bank bill pay systems and then roll them out. So I don't even know if that's the thing that we're participating in or not, but it seems like that'd be the easier.
This is Eric Barney. So I've been in banking for the last 23 years of my life. And as a company, Wilford is going to be paying for a service, whether it's an interchange fee on a credit card, or whether it's processing checks at the bank, or whether it's receiving ACH or EFTs. It's just a matter of where that fee is being paid. So it's not ever going to be a apples to apples comparison. One merchant provider to another is going to be different. So I would caution us from like shying away exclusively from like credit card interchange fees and going to ACH or EFTs, because there is likely a charge on our bank account for every EFT or ACH that we process, as well as every check you process. That's typically how commercial checking accounts work. And I'll leave it up to our finance people to go dig in and see what that is, but it's not, nothing in banking is free, because there's a cost associated to do it.
Even if you bring in cash, there's a cost associated,
Yes.
because the person often has to take your cash and sit in there and take in the cash. There's a percentage basis there too.
Yes, correct. So there's a cost to everything. You are correct.
That's really my point, yeah.
You are correct.
So I feel like we've got to decide what is a preferred method that, you know, if you want to say this is the cheapest process that we can do, and if people want to participate in that payment method, they maybe get a little bit of a break. Everyone else would incur a fee to process it a different way, or it's the cost of doing business. You know,
Honestly, I would prefer that we look at it as it's the cost of doing business.
Yeah. I agree.
You know, how much more work would it be for us administratively to implement a convenience fee?
Yeah.
We haven't dived into that for a while. At first we did, and we just basically said we'd rather not, because we were so lean administratively as it is, and I think we're still there. But I think I would speak for Paul and Matt of, we don't feel like we need to make a change right now. So certainly wanted to answer the question and look at it again.
Thank you.
It's always worth looking at, absolutely.
I mean,
Appreciate the question.
$200,000, that's 20 cents a month on your bill, and that's what. But, yeah, I'd rather, from a customer's perspective, I'd rather just have the choice and not have to, okay, I'm going to do this, that, or the other, just, this is the money, pay it, and, you know,
Yeah.
here we go.
And there's comfort and there's consistency with these payments that we're taking from customers, and there isn't a collection fee usually involved if they renege on it. So I think we're wise at this point of just including that as the cost of doing business. And I think it's gonna keep changing, don't you think, Greg, with everything online? I see in my own business, these payment processing fees are just changing because they're new, and
Well, and really,
With what's hot.
they're the same, right? They're just changing where they're taking the payment, their cut. They're just changing how they're collecting it. But the math works differently, and depending on your business and whether you have a lot, high dollar amount product versus lots of small transactions, one's gonna benefit you as a business better than the other, but how much time are you gonna have to spend figuring that out?
One thing to look at, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, and you've probably already looked at that, you mentioned, we are putting our cash into investments and things like that, but maybe a sweep account, where the bank automatically sweeps it every day and puts it into savings, and it comes out when you need it. So that could make up a little bit for those merchant fees. I know in our business, our sweep account makes up a little bit for merchant fees.
That's a good idea to check into. I actually did that in another place I worked in that. When we were getting, a fifth of 1%.
It didn't make any sense.
I got it, kind of go, but right now, we do it manually, but we could still pick up some.
Yeah.
That's actually a good idea to look at. Yeah.
And I'm sure Zion,
They do it, yeah.
Oh, they know.
That's actually.
and they charge a fee for it.
They do. But if we're gonna get, I don't know what they do, I don't think we get 5% overnight. I don't think we get 5% overnight, but we can actually see, definitely look into it.
There's a lot of online banks too that are offering like a 4% on savings. Like I've got 6 different accounts right now that, I use the whole envelope system for budgeting different things for my small business, but, I've got all those and, I get $30-40 a month on interest, and it's like for small little savings accounts, and it's just like, man, that's dinner right there, It's like, it's easy. But it's a different banking institution, and I've got to wait 2-3 days to bring it back if I need it. So it's just something to.
We can count it pretty slick though.
Yeah.
I've used it before, and that's actually a good idea. We'll check into that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this is a great discussion, and so it sounds like the recommendation is that we continue status quo for the time being with the avenues the payment avenues that we've set up, but it sounds like the discussion is there may be a desire on the part of the board to look a little bit further into this and some of the options mentioned, so maybe that's something to be discussed in 2024, when I'm no longer on the board. So have you ever heard the management principle, SEP, someone else's problem? Oh, good. Any other comments or questions for Pam on general manager's report?
Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you for the
Pam.
question.
Appreciate it. I don't think there's a need for a closed session today. Any other business from the board? Any other topics that the board board members would like to share or discuss? Okay, looks like there being none. Again, we'll meet again on Monday evening, November 13th at 6:00 p.m. And I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion.
Second. You
Motion.
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
You too. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I made a mistake of going into work this morning.
You-